There's something I've been noticing recently. Last night, I went out by myself to a place I've been wanting to check out for a while. And right before going, there was that hesitation, that moment where it's easy to just stay in and tell yourself you'll go another time. But I went anyway. And what stood out wasn't really the place or the people. It was what happened after I got there. At first, it felt unfamiliar. I met a couple, walked around with them for a bit, just observing, not really trying to do anything. Then at one point, I sat by the pool and just put my feet in the water. And that's when something shifted. Not in a big way, just enough. Like the system started to settle. And from there, everything felt different. Conversations were easier. Movement felt more natural. There wasn't as much thinking behind everything. And what became clear through that was something simple. Confidence didn't show up before I went. It showed up after. Not all at once, but gradually as I stayed. And I started to see that confidence isn't really something you wait for. It's something that forms through small actions. Just doing what you said you would do, going even when it would be easier not to. And there's also something else underneath that. When the system is tense, everything feels harder. There's more hesitation, more second guessing. But when it starts to settle, even a little, the same situation doesn't feel the same. So it's not just about going out or doing something different. It's about what happens internally when you move through that hesitation. And maybe that's where confidence actually starts. Not from feeling ready, but from moving anyway and letting the system adjust after. It shows up in other places too. Like when you say you're going to work out, and then when the time comes, there's that quiet negotiation. And what I'm starting to see is confidence doesn't come from thinking your way into it. It comes from those small moments where you follow through even when it's uncomfortable, even when you're not sure, because each time you do, something shifts, not outside, but inside. There's a little more trust, a little less hesitation, and over time that builds into something steady, not loud, not forced, just there. And maybe that's what confidence actually is. Not a feeling you wait for, but something that forms as you keep moving and stay with it. There's something I've been noticing about how we make plans. For a long time, I felt like I needed a plan in order to go somewhere, or even just to have fun. It usually involved coordinating with someone, matching schedules, agreeing on where to go, what to do, and on the surface, it makes sense. But what I started to notice was what happens in that process. Small adjustments, change in timing, direction, and shifting what I actually wanted to do. And over time, those small shifts add up to a point where I'm no longer really doing what I wanted in the first place. And I wouldn't always notice it right away. It just feels like something is slightly off, like you're there, but not fully in it. And there's also another layer to this that I've been noticing. It's not just about plans. It's about how easily we start prioritizing others over ourselves. You might change your timing to fit someone else's schedule. Adjust the plan so it works better for them. Even shift the activity entirely, just to make it easier. Not in a big way, just small adjustments. But over time, those small shifts add up. And somewhere in that process, you start to move further away from what you actually wanted, and it doesn't always feel obvious. There's just a quiet sense that something isn't fully aligned, like you're there, but not fully in it. And I think part of it comes from something we've been taught for a long time, to be kind and flexible, and those things matter, but no one really teach you how to stay with yourself in the middle of that. How to not lose what you wanted while trying to make everything work for everyone else. And recently something changed. I started going by myself. No plan with anyone else, no coordination, just deciding and going. And what I found was different. There was no negotiation, no waiting, and less need for adjusting. Just a direct line between what I wanted to do and doing it. And because of that, I started to enjoy the time more. Not because I was alone, but because I wasn't stepping away from what I actually wanted. There's something about that. When there's no need to adjust yourself, the experience feels clearer, more grounded, more present. And it made me realize it's not always about having the right plan. Sometimes the more planning there is, the further you move away from yourself. And maybe that's the shift. Not doing everything alone, but not abandoning yourself in the process. Letting what you want be enough to move, and trusting that you can go even if no one else is going with you. Consistency isn't your problem. If it was, you wouldn't keep starting again. The real problem is something inside you can't hold it yet. And until you understand that, you'll keep getting close and then falling off. Let's talk about why that happens. Consistency isn't about pushing harder. It's about having the capacity to keep showing up. Because at the beginning, most things don't look clear. They feel uncertain, uncomfortable, incomplete. And that's usually where people fall off. Not because it's wrong, but because something inside isn't ready to hold that experience yet. So instead of asking, why can't I stay consistent? A different question becomes more useful. What allows someone to be consistent? It starts with self-trust, a quiet sense of, I can follow through. Not built from big moments, but from small ones. Keeping small promises, showing up even when it's uncomfortable. Without that, consistency breaks early. Then belief, not certainty, just enough to feel this can work for me. Enough to keep going a little longer. Then awareness, recognizing the patterns. Doubt, avoidance, overthinking, pulling away. Not removing them, just not following them. Then willingness, to feel what comes with it. Uncertainty, awkwardness, not knowing, and continuing anyway. Then action. I feel it, and I still move. This is where confidence actually builds, not before. Then risk tolerance. Being okay with it not working immediately, not being perfect, not being the final answer. And underneath all of this is regulation. Because if the system is overwhelmed, consistency is not sustainable. You'll step away, not because you don't care, but because the system can't hold it. So the work becomes simple. Regulate and then continue. And even with all of this, people still lose consistency sometimes. Not because they're not trying, but because something deeper isn't in place yet. Sometimes they're not clear on what they actually want, so they keep showing up in the wrong direction. Sometimes they're waiting for results, and when nothing happens right away, they assume it's not working. But there are phases where nothing is visible yet, where things are still building. And stopping there breaks the process too early. Sometimes everything is being controlled, planned, pushed, held together, and when everything is controlled, there's no space for anything to unfold. So they stay active, but not aligned. Sometimes their sense of stability depends on what's happening outside, a response, an outcome, a signal, and when that shifts, consistency breaks. So consistency isn't just about doing the right things. It's about having the conditions that allow you to keep showing up. And part of that is simple, but often missed. small, consistent actions toward what you want. The other part is your energy, where your attention goes, what you participate in, and what you reinforce over time. Because you can be moving forward and still pulling yourself back at the same time. So the shift isn't only in what you do, it's also in what you stop feeding. Refusing to stay in distraction, self-sabotage, negative self-talk, and patterns that don't match where you're going. Not perfectly, but more often. Returning your attention again and again to what you're building. And this is where something deeper begins to make sense. The moment you want something, you become aware of a direction. From that point, two things need to happen at the same time. You move toward it through small, consistent actions, and you begin to become the version of yourself that can hold it. Because wanting something isn't enough. If your patterns don't match it, you won't stay in it. So the process isn't just about doing more, it's about aligning, coming back to the version of you that matches what you want through how you think, decide, respond, and show up. This is where most people get stuck. They get close, but it feels unfamiliar and uncomfortable. So the old version takes over, they pull back, disrupt it, or fall into old patterns. So there are two parts. Getting what you want requires consistency. You keep showing up even when it's unclear. But keeping what you want requires embodiment. It becomes natural, stable, your baseline. Otherwise, you return to what feels familiar. So it's not just about reaching it. It's about becoming someone who can stay there. Consistency gets you there. Embodiment lets you stay. You don't need everything figured out. Just enough trust to move and enough stability to continue. So if you notice yourself falling off, pause. Don't push harder. Just ask, can I show up one more time? Because most of the time, it's not that it's not working. It's that you didn't stay consistent long enough to see it work. Keep going. You're not just dealing with stress. You're dealing with a system that's used to operating that way. And until you retrain it, you'll keep going back to it. There's something I've been noticing. For a lot of people, stress doesn't just show up, it becomes familiar. A certain pace, a certain pressure, a constant sense of needing to respond. Over time, that starts to feel normal. You might notice it in small ways. Reaching for your phone without thinking. Feeling like you always need to be doing something. When things get quiet, looking for something to fix. Even when nothing is wrong, there's still a sense of restlessness. So when things slow down, when there's space, when nothing is urgent, it can feel uncomfortable, like something is missing. But what's happening isn't just mental, it's physical. The body has learned to operate in a certain state. And when you try to shift out of it, it pulls you back, not because you want stress, but because your system hasn't learned anything else yet. And this is where the shift begins, not by forcing calm, but by working with the body, because stress creates energy. And if that energy isn't used, it doesn't go away, it stays as tension, as restlessness, as a need to keep moving. So the cycle repeats, and this is why it matters. Because when you stay in that state, you're not just feeling stress, you're operating from it. Your decisions change, your reactions change. What you choose and what you tolerate shifts. You move faster, but not always better. You stay active, but not always aligned. Over time, this becomes your baseline, not because it's right, but because it's familiar. This is why people who are more aware don't just focus on doing more. They focus on their state. Because if the system is in stress, everything that comes from it carries that energy. So instead of pushing through it, they learn to shift it. They don't let stress run all day. They don't build from pressure. They return to stability first. From that place, decisions are clearer, movement is cleaner, and consistency becomes easier. So instead of trying to stop stress, you start to move it through simple things, movement, breath, creating, letting the energy pass through instead of staying stuck. And something begins to change. The system settles. Awareness drops out of the head and back into the body, from control into something more grounded. And from there, a different state becomes available. Not forced, not chased, just felt. Over time, repeated enough, that state becomes familiar too. This is how peace is built. Not by removing stress, but by learning how to regulate it. So instead of reacting, you begin to return again and again until it becomes your baseline. If you notice yourself constantly in motion, pause. Not to stop everything, but to shift how you're moving through it. The next time you feel the urge to react, fix, or stay busy, don't follow it right away. Just notice it. Take one breath. Ask yourself, am I reacting or responding? Then bring your attention back into your body. Move a little, stretch, walk, or create something small. Not to be productive, just to let the energy move. You don't need to change everything. You just need to interrupt the pattern, one moment at a time. Because peace isn't something you wait for, it's something you practice. And over time, it becomes where you live. Staying with yourself requires a certain level of awareness. It's not something that just happens. It's something you practice, especially during a transition. I'm in that space right now where things are still shifting, and I've had to learn what it really means to stay with myself instead of pushing past what I'm feeling. One way to start is doing small things you actually enjoy on a regular basis. It can be simple, a yoga class, going out with a friend for a short conversation, or making a phone call you've been putting off. These small promises you keep for yourself matter more than you think. They build trust, and they remind you that you can move through this. Over time, that becomes confidence. For me, even just choosing to show up and create when everything else feels uncertain is one of those promises I keep. The second part is as building a daily routine that supports your nervous system. This means being intentional about what you allow into your day and reducing anything that creates unnecessary stress. Giving yourself space is part of the process. Just like the body needs time to recover when it's tired, your system needs time to settle when it's been through a lot. It's not broken, it's processing. During this time, you may need to pause certain things, work, projects, or responsibilities that take more from you than you can give right now. I've had to do that myself, even pause in parts of my trading, not because I can't do it, but because I know I need to stabilize first. That's not falling behind. That's protecting your capacity. And there's another layer to this that I had to see. A lot of the times we feel unsafe. It's not just because of what's happening around us. It's built from the moments we abandon ourselves. Each time we ignore what we need, stay quiet to keep the peace, or push past our own limits, we slowly create that feeling inside. So over time, even when nothing is wrong, the body still feels unsettled. Because safety was never built within, we start looking for it outside, in people, in outcome, in control. But real safety doesn't come from someone else. It's something we learn to create for ourselves. And when we begin to stay with ourselves, to listen, to respond instead of override, that feeling starts to shift. The next part is creating. Allow yourself to create, even if it's just for you. This process helps you express what's inside and give your experience a place to move. Even if no one sees it, even if no one understands it, doing something that speaks your language is a way of telling yourself, I'm here, I'm listening. And that matters. For me, creating has become part of how I heal. It keeps me connected to myself, even in the middle of uncertainty. And finally, seek support. You don't have to do this alone. Whether it's reaching out to someone in your network, your community, or accessing available resources, support exists for moments like this. Even something small, a conversation, someone watching your child for an hour, or just having someone listen can make a difference. I'm learning that asking for support doesn't take anything away from you. It actually helps you stay steady. You might be surprised how many people are willing to help when you allow yourself to ask. This stage is not about pushing forward. It's about staying with yourself long enough to rebuild from a place that's steady. And that's how you move through it. I started noticing something about how I was showing up. For a long time, I didn't think it mattered. I would wear baggy clothes, t-shirts, jeans, or just stay in yoga pants all day, hair up in a bun, no makeup, just whatever was easy. And maybe you've been there too, where you're not really thinking about how you show up. You're just getting through the day. After having a child, I stopped caring about how I looked. My focus shifted, and it felt like there was no real reason to put in the effort. Most days I was just picking up my child, running errands, and coming back home. Who am I even getting ready for? But over time, it was how I was being seen. And more importantly, how I was seeing myself. There were moments where people would treat me differently, not in a harsh way, but in a way that made me realize I had almost disappeared in how I showed up. I remember even being called sir once at the zoo entrance, and that moment stayed with me. And I had to ask myself, when did I stop showing up as myself? There was a phase where most of the clothing I chose was gender neutral, paired with a baseball hat, minimal, low effort, easy. Not just in how you dress, but in how you stop choosing yourself, how you make yourself smaller, how you go with what's easy instead of what actually feels like you. Because the truth is, the way we show up externally reflects something internally. And I realized I wasn't neglecting my appearance. I was slowly disconnecting from myself. So I started making small changes, nothing big, just choosing to get dressed with intention, taking a little more time, wearing things that made me feel like myself again. And something shifted, not overnight, but consistently. I started to feel different. The way I carried myself changed. The way I walked, the way I spoke, the way I entered a space, it all felt more grounded, and I began to respect myself more. And when that changed, everything around me started to respond differently too. Because when you show up for yourself, people feel that. It's not about impressing anyone. It's about saying, without words, I matter. And when you start respecting yourself in that way, you naturally begin to allow better things into your life. You feel more deserving, and that leads to different choices. You treat yourself differently. So this isn't about fashion. It's about coming back to yourself in the way you show up every day. Even if you're not going anywhere, even if no one sees you, so what? Getting dressed for you, and that is enough, and that's where it starts. This is one of the ways I'm learning to stay with myself. And maybe this is something you can come back to too. So I started making small changes. Nothing dramatic. just little shifts in what I would normally reach for. Instead of a baseball cap, I started wearing a simple hat. Instead of grabbing the same baggy jeans, I tried a long skirt with a simple top. At first, it honestly felt a little different, even a bit uncomfortable, like I wasn't used to seeing myself that way. But I kept doing it. And after a while, I noticed something. It actually became hard to go back to jeans and a t-shirt. The flowing dresses made me feel lighter, more open, a little more playful, more like myself. Even with shoes, I used to wear sneakers everywhere, and I still do when I need to. But when I don't, I started choosing simple flats, still comfortable, just a little more put together. And I realized you don't have to give up comfort to feel good in how you show up. Another small thing was my bag. I used to wear a small waist bag everywhere. Quick, easy, practical. And it works, especially if I'm running around or need my hands free. But for every day, I started using a simple handbag that I can still wear crossbody. And something about that small change shifted how I felt. It wasn't about doing more. It wasn't about trying to be someone else. It was just choosing myself a little more in the small things. And those small choices started to change how I felt every day. If you've been feeling off lately, like something is missing, but you can't explain it, it might not be your life. It might be that you've been doing everything alone for too long. I didn't realize how disconnected I felt. Not in a dramatic way, just quietly. Doing everything on my own, going through the day, handling what I needed to handle, taking care of responsibilities, but still feeling like something was missing. And I didn't question it for a long time. I thought maybe this is just what life looks like, but something shifted recently. On Easter Sunday, I went to a community church near me with my daughter. It was the first time I consciously chose to go. I arrived late, only caught the last part of the service. But even in that short time, something stayed with me. The people were kind, welcoming. There was no pressure, just a space where people came together. And sitting there, something else came back to me. When I was young, I used to go to church with my grandmother. It was something we shared. After she passed, I stopped going. And over time, many years went by without stepping into a church. But being there again, I realized it wasn't just about the place. It was about what it represented: connection, presence, and a connection to people and to a feeling of love that I once knew. Something I hadn't felt in a long time suddenly felt possible again, and I started to see something more clearly. It wasn't just that I felt disconnected now. You don't have to go out and find your people. Sometimes it starts by putting yourself in a place where a connection can happen, a space, a routine, something you return to. For me, this became something I can come back to, not just once, but again. And over time, that creates something: familiar faces, small conversations, a sense of belonging, and even a new sense of purpose, not something big, but something steady. And as a single parent, I realized I can't do everything alone, not long term. And maybe that's what I needed more than anything. Not to figure everything out, not to fix everything, just to reconnect. So if you've been feeling off or a little disconnected, maybe nothing's wrong. Maybe you've been carrying everything on your own for too long. At some point, the work isn't about pushing harder. It's about creating stability, not all at once, but through small, repeatable choices, a place you can return to, a routine that holds you, something in your week that doesn't ask you to figure everything out. Because when you're building a new life, It doesn't happen in big moments. It's built in what you return to. And over time, that becomes your foundation. Not perfect, but steady. And from there, things begin to grow. So instead of trying to change everything, choose one place, one moment, one space that supports you. Let that be enough for now. Because sometimes the next step isn't about doing more, it's about building something you can stand on.